Welcome back to the WSU Democrats podcast. My name is Ethan Bishop. I'm the president of the organization.
I'm Vaughan. I'm the vice president.
I'm Macy. I'm a member of the WSU Democrats.
And I am Alexandria, the Women's Committee Chair.
Awesome. We got a packed episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking about Iran. We're going to be talking about Trump. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things. So I'm going to pass it off to Vaughan because he helped us out with the script today.
Yeah, so I want to start off on what everyone's already heard, where Trump posted a AI picture of himself as Jesus wearing white robes or white and red robes, and he's healing a sick man, and there's a lady praying next to him, and like there's a soldier and like a bald eagle and all the American bullshit. And he received tons of criticism, and he actually took the post down, which he usually doesn't do when he posts crazy shit. And when he was asked about it in an interview, he said, quote, "I thought it was me as a doctor." And he says that people calling him, trying to say that he, was calling himself Jesus, he says only the fake news could come up with that. And then he also said that he thought the image was made by a very beautiful and talented artist. So this just all kind of makes me think of how the Congress is trying to get his physician to evaluate his mental state and then turn around and release the report to see if he's fit for the job, which he is clearly not. And then this post also came a few days after he criticized Pope Leo's opinion on the Iran war. And he says that the Pope is weak on crime. And you will understand this, Alexandria, more than I will, but I don't think crime is the job of the Pope.
So as the resident cradle Catholic, I am very happy to inform you that crime is in fact not the jurisdiction of the holy fucking See of Rome. Are you kidding me? Tough on crime? Visit the prisoner, you unchristian motherfucker.
Exactly. So yeah, he's clearly lying, and people just eat it up. I mean, you see the picture, and he says, "Oh, I thought it was me as like a Red Cross doctor." Like, people will hear that and see the picture for themselves and still just be like, I think he's telling the truth.
Here's. Can you actually turn me up a little bit, because I feel a little quieter right now. I just, as fucking goddamn idiotic as this shit is, it's so fucking unimportant. I don't care. I don't give a fuck that Donald Trump is depicting himself as Jesus Christ. You know what I care about? I care that he's using my tax dollars, the appropriations of a million different departments to do everything that a president should not be doing. Right? I saw a TikTok. I believe it was the Episcopal priest. I think it was Father Sam. He's one of the famous sort of priests on TikTok who makes content. Who was like, it's so unimportant, the mockery, and as offensive and as disgusting and as, again, idiotic as it is. This is not what's important. This is not what I want to be talking about. Is he posted a video or a photograph that was generated by a machine in a couple of seconds, and he forgets about it and it becomes a scandal. He deletes it. Okay, sure. Where is the filibuster going? Where is the sort of any kind of appropriation? Where are like the actual functioning members of this government and the functioning systems within this government? And why are we focusing on Twitter?
Yeah.
I don't. It is such, and this is the same man, the same sort of spree of insane, degenerative, brain rotted posts of the guy who will stay up from 11 o'clock at night to 9 o'clock in the fucking morning posting the most unhinged shit you've ever heard or seen. I mean, the man is clearly sundowning. Can we focus on something fucking important, like getting him evaluated and out of the fucking office, instead of, he's depicting himself, does he think he's God? I don't care. He doesn't think. He can't think. His brain is melting out of his fucking ears.
Yeah.
Well, I think it is fascinating that the response time was so much quicker for this instance than it was for the previous controversy with the Obamas. And I think that that speaks to the fact that he wants to try and protect the limited amount of constituency that he has left. And it has a lot less to do with the fact that he actually cares about the whole incident in and of itself. And in addition to that, it's funny that this is the thing that a lot of people feel like he's crossed the line on when he didn't put his hand on the Bible and he's done nothing Christian in both of his terms as president. And this is what you draw the line on. To me, that's fascinating that you can have more outrage towards an arguably fictional person, sorry, Christians, than a former president of the United States and the first lady.
Right.
Yeah.
If anything, I think that his post about threatening a whole civilization will die tonight the other night,
significantly more.
yeah, that was way worse. And that also flipped on its head when everyone's like, oh, you're against the war in Iran. Don't you know they kill gay people? It's like, bro, look what Trump threatened to do. He threatened to kill every last one of them.
That is a war
It's like-
crime.
Which
and
he
a
still hasn't
violation of
apologized
international
for.
human
Yeah.
rights.
But yeah, so moving on to Iran. So Trump has enacted a blockade on Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz to increase negotiation pressure. And this comes.
Blockaded the blockade.
He did, exactly, because this comes after a week after he called on Iran to open the strait, you crazy bastards.
Or
And
you'll
then
be
he
living
goes
in hell.
he goes in and then partially
Praise be
closes
to
the strait
Allah.
himself. So he's just completely hypocritical. And I saw even Xi Jinping called Trump's blockade dangerous and irresponsible, and that the world must not be allowed to revert to the law of the jungle, which I thought was pretty interesting. It makes me think of like the worst person makes a valid point. You see this from China and North Korea. They're calling out Trump, like how Epstein said Trump was a terrible person. Like how far do we have to go for people to actually realize? And people are catching on, but slower than I would want.
When you have like prominent Shia Muslims like the president of Iran and the Pope on the same side against one guy, you're fucking up.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to also add, in the international community, we have what's called the R2P framework, which is the responsibility to protect. And there's a lot of debate on when there should be foreign interference in instances like this. And China is one of the most staunch supporters of non-interference unless absolutely necessary. So that puts it into perspective how severe this is, because China has never in the history of R2P supported the interference of foreign actors in state issues. So the fact that they're speaking on this is something that we should be deeply concerned with, because they're CEO of non-interference when it comes to R2P.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, this war is far from over, despite what people say. My Twitter account is pretty much just for politics, and I follow a lot of right-wing media outlets just to balance out, and which does piss me off a lot of the time, because I saw a notification the other day, just some random dude. He was saying, peace negotiations are happening this week. The war is almost over. Like, it's going to happen. This is it. And we've had so many talks already. We had a partial ceasefire in Lebanon, and that fell through almost immediately. And
I don't think the ceasefire ever actually ceased fire.
Yeah.
I think they said the word ceasefire and then just kept invading Lebanon.
Yeah. And then it got worse once it actually
Because the
ended,
ceasefire
but-
doesn't account for military occupation at all. So
Yeah. But yeah, people just will see this news. There's talks happening, and then they'll say the war is over, and just to, I think, help out Trump a little bit, because they're so MAGA. But anyone with a brain can see that it is far from over. So moving on, 2 congressmen have resigned just hours from each other. One Republican from Texas and a Democrat from California. They're both in the House, and they both resigned due to sexual misconduct allegations. And this is just so both of these positions will go to special elections. But this is I think, affirmative action we should see from politicians when stuff like this happens. You should be stepping down, and you should be taken accountable for your actions. And this is we're obviously not seeing that with Trump or a lot of higher ups, but we are seeing it from these people. So I mean, I guess it's good they're stepping down, but I think we need to see more of that when people are accused of these types of things.
It's Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I think it's really interesting that these people were allowed to be in elected positions of power to begin with, because I'd be willing to bet that these accusations existed long before they stepped down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with Tony Gonzalez, the Republican, I don't know if any of you heard about that story, but he basically had a sexual relationship with one of his staffers, manipulated her a shit ton, and then she ultimately committed suicide by setting herself on fire. So that's what happened. And then after she set herself on fire, everyone was wondering if there was kind of a sexual relationship, and there was. That was uncovered from the emails and stuff. With Eric Swalwell, he's just like, he's probably a sex addict, and because he, is somewhat decent looking and he's in a position of power, he can just get women and like that. And I think that he definitely should have stepped down before. He definitely has no remorse. And even in his statement, he even said, "Oh yeah, I'm not, I deny all the allegations, but I'm not a saint, and there's issues that need to be dealt with between me and my wife." It's like, that's not what an innocent person would say. It's like period. And so there's no doubt in my mind that Eric Swalwell did do a lot of that shit.
Yeah.
You don't have a bunch of just random accusations if you didn't actually do something. And there's also video of him acting a fool too that I saw. So,
and I should say, I don't think people should step down just because of allegations alone, because there's false allegations. Like, that's a very real thing. But I think in terms of these two people, it's very clear, that they are guilty. So in those cases, I think they should step down.
Like one allegation or something where, I mean, because false allegations do exist. Like. And I hate saying that as a guy where everyone says to believe women and all that. And it's like, yeah, you should, but don't tell me there's not going to be a situation where a woman could lie in order to hurt a man's political career. That absolutely could happen.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. But at the same time, people aren't just coming up with random sexual assault allegations just for fun.
Well, what I will say, I finished a book this morning that was on the depiction of women and how they're pit up against each other in the media. And there was a section on politics, and I thought it was really interesting because apparently there was only one representation of women in politics in the media up until 2012. And then after that, we've only seen very limited amounts. And what we have seen when women are allowed these spaces in politics is that they're extremely hypersexualized, they are talked down to, and they are dehumanized constantly. So I think that it opens up a bigger conversation to the fact that women aren't even given the opportunity to be deplatformed in the same way, because they're still being viewed as second-class citizens in politics. And I think that that's a really important point when we bring up this conversation, is that we shouldn't be celebrating men for doing the bare minimum when women are not allowed the same seats at this table. Like, they shouldn't have to bring their own chair and then have to appear in a certain way to be allowed the dignity and respect that human beings should all be allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not applauding them for stepping down. I think that's just the bare minimum.
But people are celebrating them, and that's not a noble thing to do. That's the bare minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's very interesting what's going to happen in California due to their primary system, where they were afraid because the top two candidates of the Republicans and the Democrats advanced to the general. So they were concerned that it could be two Republicans because the Democrats are so fragmented.
Yeah.
And now with Eric Swalwell gone, he was the front runner. So now he's gone. Now it looks like it's going to be Tom Steyer. I think he's leading in the most recent poll. There's also Katie Porter. I don't know about y'all. I think Katie Porter has a good heart and all that, but I find her to be generally, well, I'm not going to say that. I think she might have somewhat of an electability issue that some of the other candidates might not have.
Yeah.
Who's Katie Porter?
Katie Porter is the one in the Congress. She always holds up the whiteboard, and I think that rhetorically she's probably the weakest. Like,
I'm not familiar enough.
Yeah.
So the crew for Artemis 2 splashed down in the Pacific on, actually I don't even know if they're specific, but they splashed down on Friday from their historic mission around the moon, and the crew has said that they haven't fully processed the extent of their accomplishments. It's still very new, and they're just all putting it together. But they did say that Earth looks very fragile from space, and that they saw the planet, saw us all as one species with no borders, and just they're emphasizing people to work together because NASA people from NASA astronauts try to stay, as nonpartisan as possible, but you can see that they recognize the problem and are wanting to bring people together. And I think as a unique experience that it is to be in space and see Earth like that, I wish more people could see that, because I think they would kind of realize, that we're just the same species and we all just the same goals pretty much, and we should just work together more and stop arguing.
I was cracking up at the conversation they had with Trump that looked more like a try not to laugh
Oh my
challenge.
god, I know. Were they all fucking like went silent, and they were like, just to double check, are you still on the phone? He's like, yeah, I'm here. And then they just kept,
It was silent
they
for like 15
silent.
seconds.
Oh my god, it's beautiful.
And then they talked to like the Prime Minister, I think, of Canada, and they were all like so happy to
Oh
talk
yeah,
to him. It was
brilliant.
good.
It's
But-
amazing.
And they responded to Barack Obama's tweet about just congratulating them. They said, like, thank you, Mr. President. So you can kind
Oh,
of
that's
tell
so awesome.
where
love
they
that
land.
shit.
But and then last, so Trump has passed a policy in February that prohibits trans prisoners from getting their hormones. And I was just looking into this. It looks like this is only for prisoners who were not on hormone therapy before they were incarcerated. But then I also want to just point out this quote from Dr. Carl Streed, who's a primary care physician, one of the country's leading researchers on transgender health. And she said, from a medical point of view, this is alarming because it's essentially saying that a form of evidence-based care will no longer be provided to people under the purview of the Bureau of Prisons. So that this should very much be looked at from a medical standpoint, and this should be the policy should be written by doctors and physicians, but instead it's just turned political. And I know a little bit about this if you want to.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think is fascinating from a criminal justice standpoint, I was doing some reading today actually for an exam, and there is a constitutional protection for prisoners to be able to practice their religion without unreasonable accommodation. And I think the fact that that is prevalent, but we can attack someone's ability to access essential medical care is troubling, to say the least, because it is not unreasonable to ask to have access to something that saves lives, especially when we see mental health and addiction struggles so consistently in the criminal justice system. I think to deny someone just on the basis that they may not have been able to access those medications beforehand, or they may have had those realizations upon withdrawal, or their ability to be in a confined space, I just think that that's a really disappointing take. And I mean, we have evidence even out of our own state that gender affirming care saves lives, and it's just continually rejected by the right side. And I mean, I think we see this time and time again that rhetoric is favored over fact or over science. And we are kind of seeing this attack on education as well. We will call it liberal indoctrination, or we will deny it when it doesn't support our ideologies. And I think Trump is no stranger to doing this. So I think ultimately it's really disappointing to see, especially knowing what we do about the prison industrial complex. And it'll be interesting to see if this has a disproportionate impact on people of color as well. But yeah, I just think that Trump's attacks on the trans community speaks volumes to the way that he continually tries to vilify the most marginalized populations. It's a constant strategy that is used in democratic backsliding or the rise of fascism within countries. We like to see that they will go for extremely marginalized populations first because it's usually easier and there's less protections on those people, and then it will advance further into other areas of rights. And I think that there's a reason that we're seeing continued attacks on trans people and immigrants, and it's because that is something that he can do with less backlash, but I don't think that it stops there. And I think that if you believe that this won't affect you, you are sadly mistaken. And I also want to remind everyone that gender affirming care is not just for trans people, and to put the burden back on doctors, especially those who are working in the criminal justice system and are likely underpaid, is not fair, because ultimately when we restrict gender affirming care, we are requiring the provider to designate what that gender affirming care is for, and if it's for a trans person or someone who is not trans. And when we put that burden back on the doctors, you're not only having that affect their level of care, but you are also risking their ability to have a career. And where we have a shortage in healthcare providers, I think that this is going to turn more and more people away from public service and from medicine in general if you're going to place a legal burden on a healthcare provider.
Yeah. And I also think that just like the scientific consensus, like the American Medical Association shows that gender affirming care literally benefits every single part of their life. Suicidal ideation goes down, self-harm goes down, mental distress, even things like binge drinking when they receive all desired surgeries and smoking, it all goes down. So I think it goes to show that for people who are suffering with gender dysphoria, getting gender affirming care benefits every single part of their life. And you could also make the leap, I'd say, that a criminal or someone who in the past has, made some bad decisions, maybe that's in part inspired by their mental distress, which might be in part be caused by gender dysphoria. And if they get treatment for that, everything in their life will improve. If it stops them from wanting to do other things that is negative to their well-being, such as doing drugs, and a lot of this is fueled by drugs too. So even that, if we can reduce that, that will, make it so we have better outcomes as far as, patients. And I would also say that this is admittedly not the best ground to be fighting on for Democrats, because I think most Americans would look at that and be like, trans criminals should not get gender affirming care at all. And that's why Trump used that as the boogeyman in the 2024 debate. And it wasn't effective, I don't necessarily think, but if people do actually think that's happening, I think that could be effective at swaying public opinion against us. I don't think it's right, and I think as we as a culture start seeing gender affirming care as medical care, I think it'll just naturally progress and it won't be as much of an issue. But I think first we need to, look at gender affirming care prevents suicide, prevents or alleviates depression, helps with all of these things, so we should provide it. It is the best treatment for gender affirming care, and the right has no better alternative. And just bringing into the jails thing, I mean, it's important, but I think it also gives the right a kind of an easy, cheap shot at us, at least in the eyes of most Americans. I don't personally think it's that big of an issue, but
Yeah.
There was one more thing I thought that I just wanted to add, and that is a reminder that the LGBTQ rights movement was initially centered around white men and then was added on to be white women. Trans people were historically discluded from the LGBTQ rights movement. And so I think it is the responsibility of allies in the LGBTQ community to stand with trans people at this time, recognizing that this movement was not built to include them. And we see that a lot in our systems that we have and our bureaucracy as a whole, is that we intentionally left transgender people out of the conversation. And I think we have a responsibility as Americans to work and try to fix the administrative issues that we have enshrined so systemically into our American systems, because there is a deliberate reason why these people are still being marginalized. And it's because the movement was not built to include them.
I do also just want to add to that the first people to throw bricks at Stonewall were trans women.
Yep.
Because it is, in fact, true that these arms are built for destroying the system, motherfucker.
They also were the first to respond in the AIDS outbreak.
It's true. That and lesbians. That's why we're the first letter in the acronym.
I did want to say, I think this, just like transgenderism as a whole, is that an accurate term, by the way?
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. It's kind of like calling women females, in my opinion.
So, like, I don't even know, like, what the
Alternative.
The alternative would be. I usually just like when referring to trans identity in public life, I will just, it's a mouthful, say trans identity in public life. I actually just finished a paper about the effects of misinformation, disinformation, and essentially propaganda machines on the, because while it is actually technically true that support for trans protections and support has lessened, and support for restrictions on us has increased in popularity. It is still largely the overall majority, a very slim margin, mind you. It's where it'll be in like the 50s or 40s, like sort of over-unders as far as people supporting trans people in public life, right? So it is definitely an issue that people are very heavily divided on, but it's also an issue that a lot of people like don't give a shit about. I mean, as like a trans person going through my life, I meet more people who really couldn't care less than people who are actually like upset about it.
Yeah.
And again, and like it's not like I live a cloistered life, just on college campuses. One of my favorite things to do is go to non-gay or trans places and just be a person and talk to people, because it one gives me a sort of chance to sort of actually involve myself with people who might not have met trans people before, and just to like sort of normalize for other people that hey, trans people are just like the lady sitting across the bar
Yeah.
who's talking to some other random guy about economics or some shit, 'cause I'm a fucking nerd.
Yeah.
But it is such like in 2021 there were 153 bills in Congress that would effectively restrict or limit the freedoms of trans Americans. Today, right now, that number is 760 something, 600 and so of which are active bills. In 5 years, the number of bills attacking my identity, my community, my ability to exist in public life has increased by sevenfold. Have you met sevenfold more trans people since 2021? Have you met 7 times more trans people? Have you encountered 7 times more of us? Are we engaging in 7 times more violent crime?
Utah's passed 45 anti-LGBTQ bills in the last 5 years, and trans identities are ranked at the bottom of voter priorities in Utah.
Yes, it is. It is like the. I mean, there was fucking when like, in the same interview where they were talking with Donald Trump about that stupid AI image, he turns to a lady, literally a fucking DoorDash driver. She's wearing a DoorDash shirt. He says, "What do you think about men playing women's sports?" And she straight up goes, "I don't have an opinion on that."
Really?
Yes, on the fucking news, right? She's sitting there in her DoorDash shirt. And he goes, "Oh, I bet you have an opinion on men playing women's sports." And she's like, "Nah, I'm here about no tax on tips."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
she
that
claimed
video.
she saved like $11,000 with his no tax on tips, big beautiful bill. But my takeaway from that is she's like 65 years old and doing DoorDash.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Not really the tax on tips. But I did want to say that I think I'll just say transgender people as a whole are just so alienated. And when we start thinking of just including trans rights and human rights, and what you said, Ethan, just thinking of gender affirming care as just all other medical care. These prisoners aren't getting anything extra
And speaking of
in
which,
comparison
this
to
trans ex-con just got back on hormones, motherfucker. So I'm less fucking oily and suicidal than I normally am.
Congrats.
Good for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're not getting anything extra. There's so many prisoners with medical issues, and
again,
they get
such
treatment
a
too.
small portion of the population. And like estrogen, like testosterone's a controlled substance, but estrogen is not an expensive chemical to synthesize, right? It's not like something that the government is, and it's not like the government is like spending all these resources to give trans people medical care. We spend more money giving men and women, men in the armed services Viagra than we do giving anyone estrogen or testosterone.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to say just about the debate that we had with the transgender topic. I think the main reason we won that topic in particular was that we were just able to point out that there is no other alternative. And you can look at the conservatives and say, hey, maybe gender affirming care isn't perfect. It's not the best system. Maybe there's a better way. But right now, the data and the numbers absolutely back up gender affirming care as just the best solution and essentially the cure to gender dysphoria.
Gender affirming care can be anything from hormones to just like being nice to someone.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
talk therapy, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you have like certain medical conditions, then like hormone therapy is actually not like always safe, because like for certain like medical conditions, like if you have like heart conditions or blood conditions, like it can cause like different actual like physical symptoms. And so some people, not every trans person can go on hormones. Not every trans person can afford
Yeah.
hormones. Gender affirming therapy is just whatever it takes to make a person feel comfortable in their body,
Yeah.
whether or not they're trans.
Heaven forbid.
Right.
Yeah. And something that I said during the debate, which I think is important when people are talking about public opinion, because that's kind of where this came, is, how about anyone who doesn't like trans people? I'm sure they have a member of their family who are trans, or maybe they're, not public about it, but I'm sure they know someone or can find someone who is trans. How about you talk to that person and see where they're coming from and actually humanize them in your head rather than
Yeah.
villainizing them.
Yeah.
And if they're your family member, how about you treat them with dignity and respect and actually love them and treat them well? Because that's not what you're doing when you're spreading all this hateful rhetoric about trans people. And a lot of these people, they do have trans members of their family. Like I think Kalijah, who's now
Yeah.
the executive, vice president of Weber State, the student government, when he was debating us on trans rights way back in 2024, he said that his sister was trans, and he was sitting there right next to Jared saying that transgenderism is like a mental illness and
Yeah.
trans people should be eradicated and stuff like that. And it's like, how about you actually talk to your family members and see where they're coming from? Because I think that would solve so many of these issues. Yes, trans people are a small percentage of the population, but they span towards almost every single family, at least extended family. You're going to find at least
Yeah.
one person in there that's trans.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the solution is community, is actually talking to each other and, seeing, why am I actually hating this person? They're just wanting to live their lives. pretty
I
much.
agree, because even if it comes from a place of support and wanting to, be an ally, there's only so much you can do by researching, and just getting out, like you said, and talking to people is the absolute best thing you can do. And when I was younger, I would say, it came from a place of ignorance. I didn't understand it, and my family didn't understand it either. It was just like you just heard about it at school, and I'm like, yeah, these are just weird and strange, whatever. But then when you actually
when I
start
was
talking
younger-
to people, you're like, okay, they're just completely normal, and I've been fortunate enough to talk with some trans people who were very open and honest about their experience just to help me understand, and that's helped me talk to my family who doesn't understand and try and help them. So.
And I think just to round out this issue, because I would like to leave off on like a positive note.
Yeah.
I've got some good numbers here that will make some people happy and other people maybe a little upset. But if it makes you upset, you're a bitch. No, just just to round that out. As like a trans person myself, before I knew that I was trans, before that I had any concept of my own gender dysphoria in terms of like being able to vocalize it and like even just to myself. The only times I'd ever seen trans people or transness portrayed or displayed publicly or in the media was as the butt of a joke or as a poorly written villain, right? As much as I love The Silence of the Lambs, it's a great movie, it's a horribly disgusting depiction of a trans person, right? It is like, and so just being able and just allowing us to exist in public life so that someone who doesn't understand the feelings that are making them hurt inside, all like just being able to say, oh, hey, what I'm feeling is like a common thing. It might not be the most common or the most prevalent, but there are other people who exist who feel the way that I do. And it's okay. And it's not horrible. It's not evil. It's not disgusting. Doesn't make me, some demonic hellspawn. It's just, hey, I'm a little goofy sometimes.
And you learn things that surprise you that, like you told me that majority of your friends are devout Christians.
Yes, the majority of
I thought that was really
my
surprising.
trans friends
And
are
a lot
devout
of people, I
Christians.
think, would be surprised by that. So just learning things like that, you're like, okay, they're literally just normal people. But what do you have there?
So I have it happened a couple days ago. It is the first 100 days of our beloved Zoran Mamdani's mayorship in New York City.
Oh, yeah.
So just to give a few numbers here, Mamdani got $1.2 billion with a B secured for universal child care, which he had to go to Albany for. That is not just a New York City thing. He managed to secure $1.2 billion from the state of New York for universal child care. $9.3 million secured in worker and small business restitution, right? Keeping, your bodegas open, keeping the culture in the business, in the families of New York City, the greatest city in the world, alive and well. $34 million won on behalf of tenants, right? One of the major things that Mamdani ran on was fairness for tenants, justice for tenants, because the rent in New York is too damn high. And then over 100,000 potholes filled. Not to mention, in the first quarter of this year, murder is down 28%.
Yep.
28% in the first quarter, you got murdered down? Shit, man. And
That's my future
what was it?
mayor.
That is my future mayor. And what was it? Over 7,000 people hired as temporary snow shovelers.
That was so
what was
cool.
it? What was it? 18 inches of snow shoveled in a day and a half?
Yeah.
That's how you're
I
supposed
mean,
to use taxpayer dollars.
That's how you use taxpayer dollars. This is what happens when we elect devoted, competent human leadership. Not some, career politician who's been doing this for 50 years and is the color of the goddamn I didn't have somebody finish that. But it's just I meant to say like decrepit and old, like beige, like how like you get like cheese.
Like that rag.
Yeah, like this rag, right?
That's like Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's like just decrepit looking and fucking gross. Whereas you got our beloved, young, beautiful Zoran Mamdani with his cats.
Or king.
And I
Okay.
did debate with a conservative about Zoran Mamdani and when he first got elected, and they were asking me, do you think he's going to do a good job just being a democratic socialist? That they said that seems to never work. And I thought, well, I told him, I was like, well, it's still very new. He just got elected because this was back in the fall, and he has a lot of ambitious ideas and plans, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. I can't tell you the future if it's going to work or not, but now we see there's the evidence that he is doing a good job and his policies do work.
Yeah.
And then
And those
hopefully
are
that will
just
spread.
4 of the
Yeah.
5 of the numbers that I pulled up. There's an entire
there's a lot more.
website where you
Yeah.
scroll and scroll and scroll. He appointed a new executive chair for I forget what the name of the committee is called, but it's like a council to combat anti-Semitism. Right? Everyone was saying, "Oh, he's an anti-Zionist. He must be an anti-Semitic." He just
Those
appointed
things
a
are
new.
not the same thing.
He just
Yeah.
appointed. First of all, those things are not the same, like you just said. And he appointed a new executive to the board to combat anti-Semitism. Sounds like America's mayor to me.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what's going to happen when Kevin Lundell wins the Ogden mayoralship.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And then what's his name? Ibrahim something in Salt Lake City running for.
Yeah,
Congress?
because as
For
we
city
know,
council?
America was
I
founded
think
more
so. Or
socialist
mayor.
than it was capitalist.
Wait, say
Oh
that again?
yeah.
America was founded on more socialist values than it was capitalist values. That's why it works.
Yep.
Shout out
Yep.
FDR.
Period.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the WSU Democrats podcast. We only got one more before the end of the semester. So, yeah, have a nice day or night, everybody. Thank you all for contributing to the podcast.